for that, Patrick. Now, Vanessa, we're going to end then with an interview that Robert F. Kennedy gave discussing, well, amongst other things, Israel.
Yeah, this was sort of quite an extraordinary 12 minutes of interview. I do recommend that people go and watch the whole interview, which covers Ukraine and COVID and a number of other hot subjects. So this was Glenn Greenwald talking to Robert Kennedy Jr. about Israel. And of course, it's come to light fairly recently that Kennedy is a staunch Israel supporter. He put out a tweet in support of Roger Waters, "You are the global hero," Orwell had in mind when he said, "In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act." And then he basically deleted the tweet, which caused some consternation on Twitter and a lot of questions being fired at him, not least by Pastor Cradula of the Convo Couch, who asked him publicly. And he basically said that he supported Israel. And that was one of the reasons that he took it down, because he couldn't agree with Roger Waters' stance on Palestine. So let's have a look, if we can, at the first section of the interview. I've cut it into short sections so people can get an idea of what he says.
Me endorsing him felt like I was buying into that. Into something that was abhorrent to me. I really disagree with his. I think Roger, like many critics of Israel, first of all, people who criticize Israeli policy should not be characterized as anti-Semitic. But people who apply a different standard to judging Israel than they would to judging an Arab country, I think then that you've crossed a line there. And I do think that Roger does that. I've now looked at some of his stuff, and I think, like I said, I do not think people who criticize that people who criticize Israel policies should not be called anti-Semitic. But I do think that many people are applying, who are Israel's critics, are applying a double standard.
Well, look, I want to, Vanessa, I want to keep the majority of the conversation on this to extra. But I mean, the first point there is applying a different standard. But Israel is supposed to be the democratic nation within the Middle East. So it's setting a different standard for itself first, isn't it?
Well, hang on. Let's have a look at this double standard. Iraq was obliterated in the Second Gulf War on the basis of having weapons of mass destruction. Israel has weapons of mass destruction. Israel bombed in 1981 the Osirak nuclear Iraq. I mean, this is quite extraordinary. Double standards. The double standards apply to Israel consistently when Israel commits ongoing crimes against Palestinians and against sovereign nations, the bombing of Syria being one example, of course. But anyway, let's look at the very next short clip.
Into Israel, I visited specifically Palestinian settlements within Israel and in, however you want to call it, West Bank or Judea and Samaria. I've been visited, I've spoken with government officials.
Did he really just say Palestinian settlements in Israel? Am I still here?
Yeah, you're still there. Yes, he did.
Sorry. I mean, this is quite extraordinary. In fact, having watched this video, I have to say that this is probably one of the most pro-Zionist, blatantly pro-Zionist presidential candidates that I have ever witnessed. I mean, even Owen Kotler, who is a rabid pro-Zionist in Canada, would describe Israeli settlements as disputed territories. But here he's describing them as Palestinian settlements in Israel. Quite extraordinary sort of inversion of reality there. But let's look at the next section.
Israel is a democracy, but it's a flawed democracy, just like the United States. But if I was a dissident Arab Palestinian, Would I rather be a dissident in Israel or in Saudi Arabia or Oman or Qatar or any other Arab nation? If you're a dissident, you get up in the middle of the public square and denounce the government. Where would you rather be? You'd rather be in Israel. It's the only place you're not going to get in trouble.
So I guess Shireen Abu Akleh getting shot through the head is his idea of, if you're a dissident, you're safe in Israel. Let's look at the next clip, bearing in mind I have more to say, but we'll say it, as you said, in extra.
If you live in any of these other countries, and you're gay, for example, you can be killed for that. Israel is the only place where you have freedom. If you're a transvestite, if you have other kind of dissident views, you'd much rather be in Israel than any other place.
I get that argument, but go ahead. You can finish. All right, well, I just wanted to ask you quickly.
Israel, and we need to have the same standard for judging Israel as we judge other Arab countries. We should, and Israel is going into the West Bank and killing children. It's never doing that deliberately. Never. And nobody has ever said it is.
Well, a lot of people have said it. A lot of people have said it is. But let me just ask you, because I just want to focus
in all of those other countries, it is the deliberate policy of those countries to attack and target civilians.
This is, for me, the most extraordinary clip. I mean, Kennedy has just effectively denied the ethnic cleansing of Palestine that started back in 1948. So Rachel Corrie was not killed deliberately. Shireen Abu Akleh was not killed deliberately. 2,200 people in Gaza were not killed deliberately in 2014. Tom Herndl was not killed deliberately. 78 Palestinians were not killed deliberately since the start of 2023, including 14 children. But if you're a transvestite or you're gay, you're okay in Israel. Anyway, next clip.
Is your argument for why we should send so much money to Israel but not to Ukraine?
Well, I mean, historically, that argument has been that Israel is a model democracy in the Mideast. It's the only democracy in the Mideast, and as a democracy, it's a model for peacekeeping. There's never been a time in history when a democracy has gone to war with another democracy. So I think our policy in the United States should be to support the growth of democracies around the world.
That was the argument for going into invading Iraq. We're going to spread democracy in the Middle East. That's the argument for supporting the Ukrainians, which is the Ukrainians are a democracy and Russia's an autocracy.
There's a difference, and Glenn, I agree with you, and I think I do think there's a difference between what we did in Iraq, which is imposing a U.S. system, which I don't think was really democracy at the point of a gun, and going in a preemptive war, which we've never done in our history, on a pretext in which we lied to the American public about weapons of mass destruction, and our policy of assisting an existing democracy in the Mideast that has had a long relationship with our country and a long and supportive relationship with our country. But, I think you raised some important points. I think it probably, at this point in history, Israel is much better able to take care of itself than it was in the past.
The only democracy in the Middle East. I mean, we've heard that for so long, and the claims that Israel doesn't attack other countries. Well, I mean, just let's look first of all at Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights, which is a grave violation of international law. The constant aggression against Syria. We were bombed here 2 days ago again by Israel. I think that's the 18th attack since the beginning of 2023. Kennedy will not comment on whether he condemns Israel's aggression against Syria. but also aggression, obviously, in the past against Jordan, against Lebanon, the invasion of Lebanon, against Egypt. And yes, we should apply the same standards to Israel. Israel should be brought to justice for the crimes it has committed against the Palestinians for more than 75 years. He's absolutely right, but I don't think that's what he meant. So anyway, I just wanted to play out one.
Well, look, Vanessa, we really are over time at the moment.
Sorry.
So if you don't mind, we'll keep that one for extra. But did you just want to end on this?
Yeah, I mean, this was interesting. There were quite a few threads being thrown around Twitter following the interview, and this was by Sam Husseini, who is, for me, a respected analyst, Middle Eastern analyst. I recommend everyone follow him. So he came up with an interesting idea. He said Glenn's questions were moderate. Kennedy's answers came off like incoherent propaganda. I would also say Kennedy looked very uncomfortable, like if Netanyahu were drunk. Arabs want to kill all Jews. No one ever claims Israel kills Palestinians intentionally. It comes off like a purpose of his campaign is to divide people skeptical of COVID propaganda from serious critics of US-Israeli axis. I would say what he did in that interview was effectively disappear Palestinians. Syrians don't matter, and foreign policy is kind of second tier to US policy. It was a bit of a train wreck of an interview, quite honestly.
Yeah. Okay. 30 seconds, if you could.
Oh, thank you. The point is, Robert F. Kennedy, he's entered the U.S. presidential election, and he has been set upon by the Israeli lobby. There's some videos on social media where he is with high-profile race-hustling rabbi that is infamous. I won't mention his name because I can't pronounce it. But so they've gotten a hold of the Kennedy campaign on the Israeli-Palestine issue, and they will not let go. So he is basically handcuffed now on all things like foreign policy related. He's talking incoherently. He's employing logical fallacies of false equivalency. Yeah. He's completely out of his depth of being able to manage this. And that's what happens when the lobby gets you by the neck, and this is going to continue to distort all of his answers on these issues.
Well, we're going to have much more to say on that in a couple of minutes in Extra if you're a UK column member. But so please join us if you could. But other than that, if you're not able to, have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great one. Bye-bye.